Main trans engine. Number 1, 2 on. Number 3, 4 off. Number 5, 6, 7, 8 on.
Hello everyone and welcome back to another episode of the Plamo Crew Podcast. This is episode 2, I guess, and of course I'm here again with my guest Citrus.
Hey, I'm Citrus.
Today we're going to be talking, no, it's all right. Today we're going to be talking about a little bit more of a topical thing. Last episode was more Q&A based. We might throw in a couple more questions from the audience in this episode, but today we do have kind of more of a topic, and today's topic is we're going to be talking about how to just generally improve your model kits, basically doing things going above and beyond just snapping them together out of the box, what you can do as a beginner mostly. Citrus, you're probably a little bit more well-versed than I am in, higher level model kit building.
Oh, no, not even close. I've dabbled in painting maybe a couple of times. And it just kind of wasn't my thing, so I don't really do it anymore.
Okay. Well, I was gonna say neither of us are really professionals, but I've been asked by a lot of people a lot of questions about various things, and I figured we could just kind of delve into that a little bit here. So let me pull up that questions thread again just to see if I can get a few of them just for reference. But I guess in general. We could just start talking off have you built anything recently? You got any projects you're working on that you want to talk about?
At this very moment, no, not working. Not building anything. I guess the most recent thing I finished was the figurized standard Kamen Rider Cyclone Joker.
Okay.
Yeah, which was pretty cool.
Yeah.
But that's not a super good kit for this subject, because the way that kit is made, the finish is it has a kind of slightly matte satin. There you go. It has a satin finish to all of it, and I think the whole idea that Bandai is trying to go with for this line is that you can put it together and not top coat it, and it'll look good enough, basically.
All right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the only thing that really needs painting on that.
But...
Sorry, say it again.
I haven't built any of those. You said it was a Kamen Rider kit?
Yeah.
Yeah, I haven't built any of those yet, but they do look good. I keep seeing them on my timeline.
Yeah, they really are. The only thing on the whole kit that really needs painting is the belt. So got to get in there with a little bit of silver and black and just pick out all the details. But otherwise, it's pretty color complete as it is.
All right, yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
Bandai's been, I've seen a couple of them. They look really good out of box. And there's nothing wrong with just snapping your kits together out of box. I do that to a lot of my kits, but I kind of feel like there comes a point where you kind of get disillusioned with that, or at least some people will, and you kind of want to start taking your modeling kits or your modeling skills a little bit above and beyond, or at least start to branch out and learn new techniques like scribing, painting, just learning how to sand instead of just cutting your stuff off the runners, just stuff like that,
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and that's kind of where I'm at right now. Actually, there's some people that I was talking to about just not really anything super important, just kind of talking about how I'd like to, stop being so much of a toy collector and start being more of an actual modeler. Learn how to paint very well, learn how to scribe, learn how to just make really clean, good-looking builds, and just improve my skills, focus more on the hobby rather than toy collecting, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
And I kind of like to, I guess I'll talk a little bit about my plans for my channel, because I've taken my channel in a couple different directions. I'm still figuring out what I want to do with it still, but I guess I personally want to improve my skills as a modeler, and I want my channel to reflect that. I don't want my channel to be a toy review channel forever, where I just kind of put out no shade to other people who do out-of-box Gunpla reviews, like Mecha Kotsu or Charlie426 or any of the other people doing that. Those are just the first few that came to mind, but no shade to them. They do what they like, and that's fine. But I'd kind of like my channel to kind of go more in a direction of somebody like G Studio or EA Gunpla, where I really up the production value, but my videos are focused more on my builds and me improving my skills as a modeler rather than just kind of me bitching about a model kit for like 10 minutes, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, you know, it might cause me to lose a bit of my core audience because I know a lot of people like the reviews, and I'm not saying I want to stop the reviews entirely. I might do a review here and there, and you know, it's gonna take a while for me to get to the place I'd like to be realistically, like with modeling skills, because I don't have a lot of that professional experience. You know, I've just started delving into painting, and I like it. I just don't have a lot of the know-how, because you know, a lot of people will ask you, like, can you teach me how to paint Gunpla? And you know, it's like, I can't, because like I'm not skilled enough to teach someone that like with confidence, but it's like, you know, I can teach you, but there's a lot of stuff to airbrushing, painting that you have to figure out for yourself, because there's a lot of variables that go into it, and it also depends on the result you're looking for.
Yeah, totally. Like temperature, humidity, like that's all stuff that nobody on the other side of a screen is going to be able to like tell you how to adjust to. Like you have to literally just figure that out for yourself once you learn how to compensate for things.
Right. Yeah, because it's like, you know, the temperature, humidity, like you said, yeah, your environment. You know, some people can't even airbrush because they live in like an apartment or something, and they can't set up a spray booth, and especially not like lacquer painting because of all the toxic fumes.
Yeah.
You know, and then there's like your pressure on your airbrush, like the air compressor values. The PSI, that's what it's called. I couldn't think of it, but you got your PSI. You've got, you know, the types of paint you use, the mixture you use, the type of thinner you use, how many coats you do. You've got your primer. You've got, you know, like there's a bunch of different kinds of primer. You know, like Mr. Color alone has all these different primers. There's different colors of primers, like black primer, white primer. A friend of mine's been talking to me about pink primer. He says that works really well, actually, but there's so much that goes into it. It's really hard to explain that all to somebody who has no foundational knowledge on it, because it is a lot to dump on them, and you don't want to confuse them, but also you don't know what they're going for. So the best thing to do is like just basically give them an airbrush, tell them like basic mixture ratios and like PSI levels, and just say go crazy. You know, paint a couple kits, see what you like, play around with it, and the best way to learn is just to do it. A lot of people are scared to customize their kits. They're scared to scribe them because they don't want to mess them up. They're scared to paint them because they don't want to mess them up, you know, and I was like that for a while too. But now it's like, you know, you start doing it, you start getting a feel for it, and yeah, you're probably going to mess up, but here's the thing is, messing up is good, because, especially if you mess up on a kit that you like, because then you're forced to learn how to fix it. And that'll give you good knowledge too.
And the other thing is like, unless you're really like using really, really hard stuff, and you know, like I think the general recommendation is that when you start painting, like you start with acrylics because they're the easiest to clean up.
Yeah.
Like all of the mistakes that you make are almost all reversible. So if you, you know, so you have your primer layer down, and then you go on and maybe like some dust lands on it, or like some condensation gets on it or whatever, and you hate the finish, you could just, you know, put a bit of alcohol on it and it just comes right off, and you can just reprimer if you need to and just start over. And like you can go pretty heavy with the layers, honestly, like before it really starts becoming like a real problem. And I'm talking about like maybe like 5 or 6 layers before it starts really actually eating away into the detail, depending on how much sanding you did beforehand and how much there was on the kit to begin with. But like there's
some kits have like really shallow panel lines, and some have really deep ones.
Yeah. So like let's say you start with a more recent kit that has, start with a kit that has really deep panel lines, and then just go at it. And you know, it also doesn't hurt that like there's a lot of these kits that are really good for practicing are also very cheap and available like all the time. So it's the barrier to entry isn't super high. The only real investment is just your time and energy.
Exactly. And you know, people will say like, I can't afford an airbrush, I can't afford a compressor. I use cheap compressor and I use a $60 airbrush, and it works fine for me. It's not the top of the line stuff, but you don't need top of the line stuff when you're learning.
Yeah,
you know?
Absolutely.
Like, you're not gonna get professional results when you're starting, because you're starting out with no experience and you're starting out with cheaper equipment, but it gives you that foundation to move up through your experience and to move up to, you know, being able to justify getting higher level equipment.
Yeah. And You know, and honestly, like even if you don't want to go all in on an airbrush, right? Because like up front, you're probably looking at least, I would say about $200 for like a decent setup without a booth.
Right.
And it probably
my airbrush alone was I think around like $60.
Yeah. So like let's say like all in, right? So you have your airbrush, your compressor, a cheap booth, and like a couple of paints and a primer. You're probably about $300 in before you even start painting.
Right, and then considering the fact that we're all buying Gunpla like all the time, just stop buying Gunpla for a little bit, put the money you would have spent on a bunch of high grades or a couple master grades, and invest that into getting a painting setup.
Yeah. But like if that threshold is still too high for you, there's always like you can always start with spray cans, and the results that you can achieve with spray cans, depending on obviously what kinds you get, and you see like there are even like grades of spray cans. You can go from like $4 Home Depot spray cans to like the little tiny Tamiya ones that are like $8 a can, but they're like a third of the size, so they run out super fast.
Right,
but
those ones are pretty decent quality for painting models still.
Yeah, and
it's just that you won't get the precision that you would get with an airbrush, because airbrushes let you get in really close. They let you have a really precise control on the paint flow. You can do like super clean like pinstriping with them.
Yeah.
Or you can spray large areas with them.
Yeah, like there's like it's not impossible, because I have seen people do it before. But like trying to do any kind of pre-shading or with a spray can is really, really, really hard.
And trying to do pre-shading with an airbrush is still really hard if you got shaky hands like I do.
Oh, for sure, yeah. But like, so like Henry McClellan, he used to go by what is it? I think it's like Vegeta 82.
Yeah, it was like Vegeta something. Yeah, like I know who you're talking about.
He did a lot of builds earlier on in his channel where he did spray cans. I think he still has that video up where he did the tutorial, and it was like,
he was the guy who made like all those like Leos and stuff, didn't he? Or,
yeah,
like,
yeah,
and something. Yeah,
and like at the time, so when I was first experimenting with like painting and stuff, like I saw that and I was like, wow, like that is it wasn't like he made it look super easy because obviously he's a pro, but like I was like, hey,
he makes it look really easy.
Yeah, it's like, hey, this doesn't look that intimidating. So like that's how I got started, but yeah.
And I mean, I think watching a lot of those videos will help alleviate a little bit of that intimidation, but at the same time, don't get ahead of yourself and don't expect it to be easy just because the pros make it look easy.
Yeah. Oh, same thing with I guess another thing that's probably even like I guess a step before painting is like, so like doing water slide decals.
Yes,
right.
That's what I was going to bring up too. Just use what they give you in the box at the very least.
Yeah. But so like water slide decals, everyone will say like water slide decals are a must to make your kits look really good. And
right.
Like I do agree with that, right? Like if you want to put markings on your kit and you want them to look the cleanest, water slide is the best way to do it. And I know that a lot of people do find it intimidating. I mean, I certainly did in the beginning, like handling them properly.
Yeah, a lot of people
really
seem
tricky.
really scared of water slides.
Yeah.
But the funny thing is like they're so easy.
Yeah, like it's not hard to do it, but the thing is, I guess it's like when you do water slide decals, you kind of have to get into a groove, right?
Yeah, you
can't,
do.
And if you miss a step or you leave something, like if you leave it in the water too long, like all the adhesive is just gonna run away and then it won't stick anymore.
But for that, you can get Mr. Mark Setter.
Mark Setter. How do I? Okay, so so Mark Setter and Mark Softer. These are two things, and there's a lot of different names that these kind of products go under. So for example, there's, I forgot what the company that makes it is, but there's also like Microsol and Microset, which are the same thing.
I've heard of those.
Yeah, and they do different things, but the Mark Setter, I'm pretty sure Mark Setter isn't actually adhesive. Like if all of the adhesive on your decal goes away and you use Mark Setter, like the decal won't stick.
Interesting, because I've always been told and been under the impression that it was an adhesive.
Is it?
No, I mean, like, I'm not trying to correct you. I'm just saying, like,
No, I genuinely...
That's just, like, what I've always heard.
I genuinely don't know, but I have used Mark Setter, and I know that it does help adhesion.
Yeah.
And as far as I don't know, it smells fairly acidic, and I don't know if that is because it is an adhesive, but anyway, yeah, so, like, you have all of these solutions that can help you, aside from just using water. And honestly, like, it's kind of funny because, like, all of the manuals will especially for, like, older kits, will generally just say, oh, just dip it in water, take it out, put it on. And then I'm just like, that makes all of this so much harder than it has to be, right? Because, like,
something that's interesting, have you ever built any of the mega size kits?
No, I haven't.
So in the mega size manuals, I don't know if they do it for everyone, but at least in the I believe the RX-0, the Unicorn Gundam one, at the end of the manual, they have a little kind of detail up guide for beginners, and it gives you a thorough play-by-play instruction on how to, apply water slide decals. And, it's not just saying, like, dip them in the water, take them out, and put them on. It's, like, multi-step. It teaches you how to do it so there's no confusion. I was like, that's really cool that they included that.
Oh, yeah, totally, yeah.
But what were you going to say? Sorry, I kind of interrupted you there.
Sorry, I just grabbed my jars of Mark Setter and Mark Softer to read the label.
Mine are a little out of reach right now.
But, okay, so the Mark Setter, it says softens and it strengthens adhesiveness. So I would guess that it... I don't know. I guess it must be adhesive to some degree, right? And the slightly acidic component probably softens decal a little bit, just so that it sticks a little better. And then, like, Mark Softer actually is really just like, it's just a acid that melts the decal essentially.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yep. You use it on the edge of your decals to melt them into the plastic, so you don't get any border at all, and it looks fantastic.
Oh yeah, totally. Yeah, the only thing tricky, I guess, about water slide decal is really just timing. It's like how long you leave it in the water for, and like how long you work with it, and and then, like, obviously, like, when you put on the softer, like, you had to put it on, wait just like a little bit amount of time, and just, like, wipe it off immediately. Yeah.
Yep. Now, as far as water slide decals and timing and all that goes, after doing a decent amount of water slides, I will say, I've put all the decals on a couple of Verka kits. That does take a while.
Yeah.
But what I've found is, first of all, people will ask what temperature you should have the water. You don't have to worry about, like, a specific temperature, but there is a difference between doing water slides in hot water versus cold water. It will work with either, although the time that it takes for the decal to separate from that paper, or like the optimal time that you're going to want to leave it in there, is significantly less in warmer water.
Yeah.
I would say for like, if the water's warm, and I'm not the kind of person who likes to keep getting up and replenishing my warm water, so when it gets cold, it's just cold. But like, I mean, it'll get lukewarm. It's not freezing in my room, but, like, when it gets to that lukewarm temperature, when it's warm water, I like to leave it in for about 8 to 10 seconds, and I found that's personally, like, the optimal time for decals for me. When it's more lukewarm, colder, I would say give it about, like, 10 to 15 seconds.
Yeah. So for me, to save the trouble, and because, like, I usually cut out multiple at a time, which some people say is a bad thing to do, right? Because it's really easy to forget one when you do that. Right. But, like, I just used, like, room temperature water, and so I'll cut, like, multiple decals, like, depending on the size, right? So if I'm working on decals of similar size, let's say, like, the super small ones usually that you put on for, like, the red warning labels.
Yeah, like the little circle with the text on them.
Yeah, like, I'll cut out one, put it in the water, cut out another one, put it in the water, cut out another one, put it in the water, and then by that time, the first one will be ready to go.
Yep.
Yeah, so, like, it's just, like, you have to kind of get into your own rhythm with it, and once you do, it's really easy, and you can do it really fast, like, much faster than you can with, like, dry transfers or even clear stickers.
Oh, man, like, I don't even like dry transfers that much unless they're larger decals, because trying to work with small dry transfers is such a pain in the ass, because it's impossible to, first of all, it's super hard to, like, just rub the tiny decal. And second of all, it's nearly impossible, at least for me, to keep the decal in place while I'm rubbing it because it's so small.
Yeah. There's like, so the manuals recommend tape, which I don't really like because well, you you could like reuse the tape after you like, oh, you apply one, take the backing off, put it on another one, right? But like while that tape is moving around, it's really easy to stick to something that it shouldn't.
Yep.
And it'll get like really grimy and dirty, and like the last thing you want is for the tape to put any like finger oils back onto the plastic after you've reused it or even used it like one time, which is really gross. So like the thing that I do with dry transfers is I have like a pair of tweezers.
Yeah.
And I would cut out...
tweezers are really, really essential for using any kind of decal, whether it be stickers, dry transfer, or even water slide.
Yeah.
Especially water slide, because you use them to fish them out of the water.
Yeah. So I'll have a pair of like broad tweezers, and then I'll usually cut the dry transfer long in one direction. So then I'll use the broad tweezer to hold the dry transfer down, and then I'll take a toothpick with my other hand, and then like rub the design onto it.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Yeah, so usually that works, and like honestly, and if the detail's big enough, I'll just use my fingers because it's easier to just use my hands to hold it down. But I just got to make sure like your hands are super clean, right? Because like the other thing is like, so there's like usually a little bit of extra adhesive around the graphic on a dry transfer. And
yeah, I've noticed that. Yeah,
so like you can get the image itself to stick down, but then you pull it away and there'll be like this stringy mess that comes off.
Yeah,
it's really important to if you didn't get it all off, to like kind of take the tip of a toothpick and kind of like scrape it off away from the graphic, because otherwise it's really easy for that to like sit on the plastic and just immediately start picking up dust and grime. It'll just look horrible.
Right. So I would say, like, let's talk about stickers for a minute. So if you've got a kit that's got a bunch of stickers, I personally, like, I hate the look of stickers. I think a lot of people do, even on like bright white plastic. They don't look good. You can clock the borders on those stickers that stand out like a sore thumb from a mile away.
See, but I'm going to counter this, because with every single kit that I have built within the last couple of years on my channel, I have used all of the clear stickers. And there are people who will say, like, what decals did you use? And I'll be like, the ones that came with the kit. And the thing is, there are definitely things that you can do to make them look a lot better than they would normally if you just slap it on with your hands.
Yeah, now here's what I do to make sticker style decals look good. Now, I've not personally delved into buying third-party water slides to recreate the stickers yet, although I plan to pretty soon. But what I do if I really want to put decals on but I only have stickers is I will trim the excess border off and just leave the decal, like the detail on the decal, and I'll put that on. I did that with my Master Grade Justice Gundam, and it actually turned out looking really well.
Yeah, so that's one thing you can do. I have it. So my technique is, I would think maybe a little bit less time consuming, since trimming does take a lot of like precision.
It does, yeah.
So I haven't done this for every build, because if the decal is going onto a white background, it doesn't really show too, and it's like honestly kind of easy to correct in pictures, just with lighting to make them disappear, kind of. But
right.
Let's say you're putting on a surface where the color would really show. So what you can do is take a nail buffer, buff the surface where the decal is going to go until it's completely glossy shiny. Take the decal, put it down, and this is the hard part. You have to put it down exactly where it needs to be. Don't move it at all once it's down. Starting from the middle, take a toothpick and you roll the air out of the decal from the middle all the way, so that you can get like maximum adhesion, so there's no air bubbles on the inside or along the edges of the decal, because usually that's what you're seeing, right, is like the relief that happens because the edges are not perfectly adhering.
Right.
And then if you're brave enough, and if you have like a small enough piece of buffing material, whatever, you can then sand down the edges of the clear decal.
Interesting.
And then that'll make it really blend in. So once you do the matte top coat, it really helps like make it like blend into the plastic. Obviously,
I've
like
never heard of doing that before,
like,
so that is really interesting.
Yeah, like the thickness is still there, but like from like a moderate distance, and maybe like 2 to 3 feet away, it's pretty hard to notice. I did this. The only kit where I bothered to do this like for the whole kit was the the Reborn 100 DJ that I built.
Okay.
And on the turquoise, like it looks, well, in my opinion, like at least in real life, it looked pretty good for what it was.
Yeah.
Yeah. Obviously, also still very time consuming, but like, you know, depending on how you like which parts of the steps you choose to like, not skimp, I would say, but choose to do less of, like it could, you could get into a rhythm and get it done pretty quickly as well.
Yeah. Now back on the subject of trimming the decals, when you say it like requires a lot of time and precision, I do have a method that actually makes that it alleviates the time and precision a little bit, because what I do is you got to make sure you have like a super sharp X-Acto blade. You keep the decal on the decal paper, of course. Put it on top of a self-healing cutting mat, and what you do, instead of like tracing lines around it to just cut it out, go through and make a bunch of little punctures along the edge of the decal, and this will create a perforation. Then what you do is you place the decal on the surface as a whole. You grab, I usually just use my nippers because I don't have really fine point tweezers. I really should get some of those, but you grab the edge of the decal border and you just tear it off. And the adhesion of the decal itself to the plastic is stronger than the perforation you've created, so the excess decal will just come right off.
Oh, okay, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Maybe like if you use one of those little like saw wheels too, like just kind of like run through it, because especially because like they have decals like usually like in a row, right?
Right.
So you could just like trim off the ends of a row, and then that would save a lot of time. I can see that. That's pretty cool.
I put a video up on my channel about how to make sticker decals look good, and that was the technique that I went over. So I explain that and show it off in detail. If anyone who's watching this right now wants to know more about that, I do have a detailed explanation of that on my channel. It's called like how to make sticker decals look amazing or something like that. It should be pretty recent on my uploads. If you just go to my videos and look, you'll be able to find it. But yeah, I guess as far as decals go, you know, there are third-party decal sheets you can order. Say you get like a real grade or even like a master grade that has a bunch of sticker-style decals. Chances are, unless it's like a super obscure kit, and even then sometimes those have third-party water slide decals. It's just a matter of if they exist or not, you know. But places like Samuel Decal and especially Delpy Decal, you can go to those places. You can get recreations of the sticker sheets that come with the kit in the form of water slides in case you want to use those and have a better looking finish without having to struggle with the stickers. And you know, they're only like $7 average for a sheet of these. And you know, a lot of people who I've known who have used the Delpy Decal ones specifically have actually said that they like using them more than the Bandai ones because the Delpy Decal ones are actually higher quality.
Yeah, I've definitely heard the same.
Yeah, and I don't know why that is. I would think Bandai would be, you know, they have the capacity to make really amazing water slides, but you know, it just is what it is.
I mean, at the end of the day, like Bandai stuff, like every Bandai product, even their water slide decals are made to cost. And I think like from a retail price perspective, I think Bandai decals, when they're in print, are cheaper like on the peg in Japan than third-party decals could be.
Right.
So you have like really cheap stuff that's like super flimsy, doesn't stick to anything, isn't pre-cut, that you can get for maybe like as low as like probably $3 in some places. But like you have high-end stuff that could go to like $10, $11, $15 for a sheet that you know, and Bandai falls somewhere near the lower end of that spectrum.
Yeah. Now, if you're looking to detail up a kit that maybe doesn't have any decals at all, like, you know, most high grades just come with color correcting stickers. Some of them come with little detail sheets, like the high grade TR1. Is it the TR1 or the TR6? The hazel, like that, the high grade hazel. That's all
the AOZ kits come with like little markings.
Yeah. So like, you know, stuff like that. But if you don't have a kit, or if you have a kit that doesn't come with like stock decals, there are sheets of decals you can get, which are just generic marking decals, and some faction-based decals that you can just slap on any model.
Yeah, I'm a pretty big fan of those. Like, especially because like some of the master grades for like, let's just say Zeta, for example.
Right.
Like they don't come with a lot of markings, For example, like I think like the Mara side doesn't have like it's like a pretty small decal sheet, right? So if you wanted to have more logos on it, like big Titans logos, like you could get one of those generic faction sheets and have like really nice graphics to put on.
Yeah, and I mean, some people don't like the look of decals, and that's fine. Some people are like me, and they prefer the busy look of having a ton of decals on there, but it's to each their own. But if you are a person who's interested in making your kits look a little bit more busy, if you're someone who wants more decals, those third-party sheets are definitely an option to you.
Yeah.
In terms of decals overall, I think water slides, in my opinion, are definitely the best because there's so many available out there, and because of just the ease of use once you get the technique down of actually using them. Like once you start working with them, you realize that they're not as bad as you think they are. A lot of people who have questions about water slides are really overcomplicating it for themselves, worrying about like water temperature, worrying about all this. It's literally just, at the end of the day, dunk it in the water, slide it off with a cotton swab, roll out the water underneath, and they're really forgiving too, because even if you tear water slides, you can just reposition them back together.
Yeah, just piece it back together.
Right. I was working on my high new Gundam and I tore like 3 of the water slides. I didn't fuck with the ones on the fin funnels because those ones are terrible. They wrap around multiple surfaces and they're separated in weird ways. But the ones in the fuel tanks, I tore those in like half, and I was able to piece them back together on the kit. Because when you're working with the water slides, if you put one in the wrong spot, if you don't like how it looks, you think, oh, it should be a little bit more recentered, you can peel stickers back off, but they lose some of their adhesion, and you're gonna have that tackiness on there from where it was before. You can't really peel dry transfers off.
You can't at all. No,
no. If you screw up, it's just fucked. It's on there forever, unless you just want to like sand it off, and then the decal's gone. Water slides, if you put it in the wrong position, just get the surface a little wet, and then it'll be like you just put it on in the first place. You can slide it around all you want. You can play with it. They have a lot. It's the most forgiving and, in my opinion, the best looking type of decal, especially all things considered, with the Mark Setter and Mark Softer in play.
And actually, speaking of the Master Grade New and cutting them up, so like it's pretty interesting because for the calves, the big RC, I think it's like the RC that you can put on, it goes on I think three different parts.
Yeah.
So like with a water slide decal, the really nice thing you can do is just apply the decal right to the middle of where the parts meet, and then after it cures, or sorry, like while it's curing but not completely dry yet, you can cut it along the parts, along the place where it's supposed to separate, and then once you set that down, all the edges, it'll cure, and then the image will be perfectly pieced together, and it'll come apart and it'll look really good. And like you can't, like Bandai has tried to do this with some real grades where it'll have like one half of a graphic that's one sticker and the other half on the other.
Yep.
And like trying to position that separately,
trying to line it up, it's annoying.
Yeah,
and
it is so
And that's
hard.
why I wish we got water slides with the Perfect Grade Unleashed RX-78 too, is because of the decals that go on the shoulders that have like 3 or 4 separating parts.
Yeah.
It's like you could have just given us water slides, which would have looked better, and it would have been easy to just lay this over the shoulder and then separate it.
Honestly, for Bandai, I think part of it is cost, but I guess the other part of it is like, they're always playing this weird game where they're trying to balance how approachable a kit is, even superficially, versus how appealing it is to experienced modelers. And like kits like the Perfect Grade Unleashed is kind of weird in that way, right? Because it has all of these things in it that super high-end, like experienced modelers really like metal etching.
Right, like I was actually gonna talk about metal etching in a little bit here. So yeah, that's a good kind of
but like
temporary segue into that.
The kit itself is actually not that complicated from what I've seen.
Yeah. No,
so
it didn't seem like, I think somebody said they built it in like 8 hours or something. I was like, damn, it took me three days to put together my first Perfect Grade.
But no, see, I can believe it because it basically is like a big real grade on the inside, right? For a lot of it. So it's there's not that much for you to do. So it's interesting.
Yeah, it is. I mean, because there's a lot going on, but at the same time, it's not super complicated. It is. It's just weird. But so metal, like photo etch parts, are another good way to detail up your kits. And these aren't, I don't believe Bandai actually produces any of their own metal etch sets, but there are a lot out there that are available, and what they are is they're these really thin sheets of metal that are photo etched into these detail parts that you break off the or you like cut off the, basically what it is like a runner, but it's metal, and you break that off and you just apply it to the part, and there's some extra detail. So if you're looking for another way to detail up your model kits, and most people are going to know about this, but I'm kind of preaching to the beginners here. Metal photo etch parts are a great way to go to add that little extra flair to your model kits, and I would say some of them don't look great in contrast to the plastic, because you've got kind of this weird juxtaposition of this cheap looking plastic and then this really ultra shiny metal part. So it works great for adding surface detail if you're going to paint it, so then you can blend that raised or extra detail into the parts that you're trying to like add detail to.
I will say that, and I guess it's just a personal preference, but I think that like the full potential of photo etched metal is kind of lost on Gunpla in general, because I think the only really good applications of it is where you want to put like a mesh screen or something inside of a vent.
That is good. And I would say like stuff, it's not really photo etch, but like those what are they, like die cast or something like that, but the metal verniers and thrusters, those look really good.
Those do look good. I will agree with those, because like there's just like a certain like kind of sharpness, right, and weight that the appearance of a metal thruster like that has, that just you can't really do with a plastic thruster unless you're really good at painting.
Right.
But
like I mean, if you want to paint like a metal paint onto a thruster and you want to add like a heat burn effect, that looks really good. But yeah, like a good way to get a really nice professional looking effect is to get some third-party metal verniers and thrusters.
Where I think photo etch really works is so like on a lot of armor kits, like ships and tanks and stuff, for doing so for example on boats, like rigging, like all those little arms and like gantries and stuff like that, where they have those little tiny things you can like, you pick it out of the runner and then you like have to fold it into shape. And I'm just like, yes, that is perfect. And honestly, like if you want to do like 1/144 scale kind of dioramas and stuff, especially if you want to have like a hangar scene where there is maybe like machinery around and stuff, like photo etch is like top.
Yeah because there is some stuff that you can do with photo etch that you can't do with plastic because of all of the tiny minute details,
It's just so much, there's so much precision that's possible with metal that like the plastic would just never be able to do.
Right. What else did I want to talk about? Oh, sanding. Sanding, a lot of people have questions about sanding. So for you personally, what is your procedure with sanding? Because I think I have a little bit to learn here too. I've got my own procedure, but at the same time, I feel like it could be improved a little bit because my sanding procedure takes fucking forever. So
I really like sanding sponges.
I do too.
Yeah, because
I like the MadWorks sanding sponges a lot.
Yeah, because they contour to the shape of whatever you're sanding, and like a lot of kits have curved surfaces, so you don't run the risk of creating any like flat spots if you're just a little bit like aggressive.
Yeah. Now I will say kind of a little, if I may interject here for a sec, kind of a little bit of an antithesis to that though is sometimes having sanding sponges, if you're not very careful, you can accidentally add a roundness to a part that's supposed to be flat.
Actually, that's absolutely. So like the heart, you definitely need to, depending on like how, like what level you want to be at, like you definitely need to have a hard sanding solution and a soft sanding solution.
Right, they're both applicable in different scenarios. So get sanding sticks for doing like flat angular parts, and get sanding sponges for doing round parts, and you'll thank yourself later.
Yeah, absolutely. But like I don't ever mess with like the hobby enthusiast brand sanding products though. Like I have maybe I think one sheet of Tamiya sandpaper, 800.
You gotta get gun primer. You gotta get the gun primer sanding, the glass files that cost $40.
So what I do is my favorite places to frequent really for this kind of stuff are nail supply stores. You can get big bags of sanding sponges and sticks, basically emery boards and actual like just sanding sticks for like ridiculously low amounts of money in a ton of different grits. The only kind of tricky thing is that because like all of these come from a bunch of just generic different manufacturers, and like the different colors don't necessarily mean the same grits from different places. It's just that it's best to go to a place and be able to see what grit the sponges are and buy them progressively and so on.
Exactly.
You can buy like a bag of sponges for like $10 and it'll literally last you like 100 kits because they just last forever, right?
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
So personally for you, like what grits, because this is a question that I get a lot, like what grits should I use? Like how high of a grit should I stand up to? What grits do you find yourself using like in succession, and what one do you start with? What one do you finish off with? What's your process?
So I don't really sand that much in general. I only really do it when there's a situation where the parting lines for like two pieces that are supposed to be adjacent, or if they're supposed to be like, or an actual seam line, and there's like a gap, right?
Right.
So I sand fairly aggressively. Let's see. What is this yellow one I have?
Yeah. I'm gonna take a look at my sanding sponges just to remember the grits while you're talking about this.
Sure. I have no idea what grit it actually is because the number on it is like the part number from the manufacturer, and that's
right.
it. But it's a medium-ish grit. It's like probably I think maybe about 300 or so, I would say.
Okay.
And so what I do is I basically use this medium grit block to just like get rid of the big imperfections. And the key is to not be too aggressive. Like, don't apply too much pressure because you don't want to leave like actual scratch marks in the plastic.
Right.
And you also want to be taking it off very often and like clearing off the dust so that you're not dragging along any large particles, which are also going to scar the plastic.
Exactly.
Doing this wet is a fairly good idea, but again, like if you're doing wet sanding, you still want to be like wiping off the water so that you're not just leaving all of the sand on the plastic all the time.
Right.
And then once I'm done with the medium grit, I go down to just like a regular nail block that you can find at like a 4-sided nail block. So it'll have like a coarse, fine, and then like two buffing levels usually. And then I'll go through those. So if I'm going to be putting a sticker over the surface, I'll go all the way down to the lightest. And then, but if I'm not, I'll just leave it at like the second least rough finish, because if it's too shiny, then the top coat adhesion is affected. Right?
Yeah. And for me, I use oh man, no, actually, I was gonna say something else. I totally just lost my train of thought, but I guess I'll just kind of go over what I do for sanding. Oh no, I was gonna say I need to hit up the nail shop because I want to get one of those 4-sided nail blocks, and I'll get into why in a minute here. But for what I use is I have these Madwork sanding sponges that I got it was like a $10 pack. You get like either 5 or 6 different grits, and you get 5 sticks of each. Mm-hmm. I don't use 2 of the grits. What I do is I start off with the lowest grit, which is 320. It's 320 grits, the yellow one, and then I move up to the blue one, which is I think 600. Mm-hmm. And then what I'll do is I'll wet sand with 1,000. And this still does leave like some scratches, so I'll use these. I have these little buffing pads that I got in a pack from Hobby Lobby.
Oh, cool.
And the sad thing is they do kind of wear out pretty quickly. Mm-hmm. So I need to get a nail block so I can stop using my worn out buffing pads. But I will go with the 3,200 grit, and then I'll go with the 8,000 grit, and then I'll finish off the polishing with a 12,000 grit.
So actually, speaking of polishing, there's a really ghetto thing you can do, and it's a thing that I've done before. It works so well that I have to bring it up. So you can also just use paper.
Really?
Yes. So if you have like it depends on the weight of the paper and how coarse it is, but if you have like a medium-ish weight like printer paper, you can apply that to the plastic, and if you rub it over an area enough, it'll actually buff it.
Wow, I actually never knew that. Holy shit.
Yeah, so I did that one time because I was this was like earlier on when I was really just kind of experimenting with what kind of finish I can achieve with just using whatever I had on hand. So what I did was I had a kit and I primered it pretty thick just so I can like build up a layer to work with without having to like worry about getting down to the plastic or anything like that.
Right.
And it was like a really cheap, like really chunky primer. So like when you finished it, it had a very like visible texture to it, right?
Okay, kind of like orange peel or something like that.
Not quite orange peel, but a little bit like that, you could say.
Okay.
Yeah. So I took literally just printer paper to it, and I just rubbed it over it all all over the whole piece, and it was rounded. So it was kind of nice that there weren't like too many like corners or stuff that I couldn't reach. And the first pass, where I basically rubbed each area for maybe about like 15 seconds or so, left the texture, but it was now shiny on the very upper layer of it, and it left a texture that was very similar to like painted cast iron.
Wow, I'm actually gonna have to try that sometime then.
So it was really interesting, yeah. And then obviously, like if you keep going, like you will go through the primer, like go through the paint, and you will hit plastic. But like if you just do it on plastic itself, it's actually a really easy way to make bare plastic shiny.
That is very interesting.
Yeah, and you can accomplish similar things by using like different kinds of paper towels depending on how stiff and how coarse the pattern is on the paper towels. Mm-hmm. Buffing with like something soft, like a really like soft like triple ply toilet paper is something you can do too. Napkins are something I tend to use the most. So like the sort of like brown the kind of what you call it? Like the brown kind of like recycled paper napkins, those have worked fairly consistently for me regardless of where I've gotten them from.
Okay.
And yeah, the only problem with paper towels is that like they tend to leave a lot of fibers, so like that's something to watch out for, especially if you're going to paint afterwards. You obviously don't want any fibers on your surface left over,
right? Because the paint will trap them down there. And one more thing I would add is, after you're done sanding, you may still notice there's a bunch of like tiny little like very tiny but still noticeable scratches in the plastic.
Yeah. Top
coat your kit and it will fix most of that.
Yeah.
If not all of it. Because I mean, if you're putting decals on your kit, if you're wanting to get like a certain finish, or if you're just wanting to like, just protect your kit in general, you should be top coating anyways, whether that's from an airbrush or from a top coat rattle can. When I first started out, I used to top coat with Rust-Oleum matte 2 times. Mm-hmm. And that worked pretty well. I mean, it just gave me like a nice matte finish and I thought it looked fine. I prefer top coating with an airbrush just because I like using an airbrush, but yeah, top coating will fill in some of those little scratches down there and make them a lot less noticeable.
Yeah, and honestly, I still use Rust-Oleum because it's just so cheap and available, and the thing is, like, after I finish my kits, I like messing with them, I like playing with them. So
yeah,
the finish that you can achieve with the Rust-Oleum is a little chunkier than it would be if you use something like Mr. Super Clear or something like that. Yeah, but it holds up.
Speaking of that,
yeah,
Galactic Toys is actually carrying, I believe. Hold on, I thought I had to sneeze. Galactic Toys is actually carrying, if I remember correctly, the Mr. Hobby GX Clear top coat. And I really want to try that because something I've wanted to do for a while is get a kit with a finish that is like a car model or like a brand new car glossy sheen where it's just super ultra shiny gloss. And somebody was telling me to check out the GX Clear to get that. And it's pretty expensive and it doesn't go a super long way, but I'm hoping to maybe leverage my sponsorship with them a little bit to say, hey, you want to slide me one of those bottles of GX Clear so I can play around with it, maybe?
Yeah.
I think that would be pretty fun. I've got a friend who's pretty knowledgeable about getting certain finishes, painting his kits and stuff, and what materials to use, and he was recommending me that, and hopefully he'll be able to give me a little bit of insight onto using that properly, because he said it is really something that you can't just spray down. It's something that you have to, you have to do multiple layers of very, very light layers to get the finish that I want to get. So it's just something I'm going to have to play around with and get a feel for, but that's pretty exciting.
Yeah, but honestly, like, there's no, the thing is, like, if you're really particular about the finish you want to achieve, I don't think there's ever an easy way to get there.
Right.
Like, yeah, there's really no miracle product that's going to give you, like, the perfect matte or gloss finish. It's just...
Exactly.
Yeah, it's like...
Yeah.
It's just a trade-off between all the different kinds of techniques and how much time you really want to spend.
Exactly. It is something, like a lot of things with painting, it is something that you have to play around with yourself, and you have to learn. The best way to learn is to do it. And of course, there are some products that are better than others for achieving certain things. Like for a while, the go-to thing that people would swear by for gloss finishes was Pledge, like the Future Floor Polish.
Yes.
But now that's being kind of phased out, according to the people that I've talked to, and there's better stuff for that.
Yeah. But again, like if you're like value conscious and you're not in a place where where like better products are available, or maybe you're rushing something for a competition or something and that's what's available, then yeah, like that works, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's all about what you want, what you're willing to buy or what you're willing to try out, and how much you're willing to play around with it to get the results that you want. Because you're not going to get a Gunpla World Cup, Gunpla Builders World Cup tier entry on your first try. Those people who do that shit have been building models like their whole lives, and you got to remember that.
Yeah.
I've been doing this shit for 2 years, and I'm still just barely starting to learn, mostly because I was just a snap builder for most of it, but it's just going to take a lot of time and practice to get to where I want to be. Yeah. I'd like to be at the point where I'm, doing plot plate sculpting, doing scribing, painting, adding just like extra crazy shit onto my builds regularly. But all that stuff is individual techniques that you have to practice and learn.
Mm-hmm. And I will say that once people get to a certain level, it's worth looking into like the concepts, like ideas behind design, right? Like what does it mean to have a balanced, like finished overall look? Because I do see a lot of people who, and obviously like it'll sound really bad, right? Because I don't do almost like any of these things, but I see people who are very skilled with their ability to manipulate plastic and paint and to achieve all kinds of wondrous results. And like,
but they don't really have a good eye for design.
Exactly. So you have something that's technically very, very high level, but it's hideous.
Exactly.
So,
and that's why it can be so intimidating to get into this, because you do need to have to be that good, you have to be very skilled and masterful in so many different techniques. Yeah.
And you also got to know like when enough is good is enough, right? You don't have to go ham on every piece, and
so don't worry about like if you're starting out, don't worry about like I need to scribe, I need to paint, I need to do this and this and this. Make one project just a scribing project, make one project just a painting project, until like do one thing at a time. Don't try to spread yourself too thin. And once you're comfortable with everything you want to do, then start trying to apply those techniques together.
Yeah.
And of course, like, YouTube is a treasure trove of just resources. Anything you want to learn, you can basically look it up on YouTube. Fuck all the Skillshare bullshit, Like, I'm sure that there's, some value to Skillshare. I'm not knocking it, but like for beginners, just go to YouTube and like listen to somebody talk about it.
Dude, you can't say that. You're never gonna get your sponsorship deal now.
I don't care. I'll take a Raid Shadow Legends sponsorship instead.
Yeah. Yeah.
Speaking of which, this episode of the Plamo Crew Podcast was brought to you by NordVPN. No, I'm just kidding.
No. It's brought to you by your local department store, where you can find very many convenient things that will help you get the finishes you want for less money and effort than you expected.
True. Oh, man. What else can we talk about? We talked about a little bit of painting. We talked about photo etch. We talked about decals, some sanding. What other things can we do to bring our model kits to the next level out of just snapping them together? There's panel lining. I've gotten a lot of requests to talk about panel lining, and there's definitely a couple of venues you can explore for panel lining.
Yeah.
Some people, some people don't have access to the stuff that you can use to make panel lines look really good, and they just use a pencil. You know, I've
Yeah.
seen people just panel line with a pencil, and it may not show up on darker plastic, but it does produce a better look than just being out of box because it accentuates that recessed detail.
You know, actually, depending on like how soft the graphite you use, like if you want to get like a nice reflective finish on, let's say, like a really dark color like navy blue or black, and you use a soft tip pencil, you can get like a really nice shiny graphite line in there. And I've actually done that for my on my Cyclone Joker, actually. Yeah, so the black half of it, so the Joker half of it, I panel lined it in pencil because even though it doesn't show up in the photos, but like under certain lights in my room, it actually accentuates.
It catches the light, yeah.
Yeah. So there's so many different things you can play with.
Yeah, there is, and it's, you know, you don't have to have the top of the line stuff is kind of the point I was getting at, but there are quite a few ways to panel line. You can use the Gundam markers. One thing I wouldn't advise using is pour type pens. I don't like pour type pens. They stain the plastic pretty bad. They're a pain in the ass to clean up. If you're going to go for a pour type thing, get the Tamiya panel line accent. But there's...
I mean, they're the same-ish kind of thing, but the thing about the panel line accent is that it comes out of a jar with a brush.
Right.
It doesn't come out of a hard tip, and that gives you a lot more control.
You're not having to push that hard tip onto the plastic.
Yeah.
You know, but something I did for a while, I used to panel line with it was like a 0.05 or a 0.005, I can't remember. It was a micron marker.
Yeah.
And that worked pretty well, and I actually got some cool effects out of it. I can send you a picture of the Moon Gundam that I did a while back, but I panel lined that whole thing with a micron marker, and I didn't just do the panel lines, I actually traced some of the raised parts, like where they meet the plastic and it's not necessarily like a panel line, but I traced some of that, smudged most of it away, and it created a shadow.
Oh, you know what? Speaking of that, I don't know if I can find photos of it because it was so long ago, but the on the first high grade that I built, which was Yes, it is. It wasn't the first one that I obviously talked about on my channel or anything, but the first high grade that I built was the Unicorn Destroy mode.
Oh, that's funny because the first high grade I built was the Banshee Unicorn Destroy mode.
Oh, okay, yeah, all right, yeah. So I lined it with a micron. So I was at my local hardware store and they had microns. I got a pink micron, but the nib was 0.5 mil, which is pretty large. Yeah, and that was the smallest,
especially for high grade panel lines.
So what I did was I took the pen home and I shaved the nib.
Okay.
So that it had like a very sharp point on one side, and I thought it would affect the ink flow because the ink isn't coming out like in the middle anymore. But it still worked really well. So I lined that with that pen because at the time I didn't have like access to like the Real Touch pens and all that stuff now that I have. And the hard tip was a little tricky to work with because it doesn't track very well, especially on surfaces that, like on the raised details that you were talking about, right? It's really easy to slip off where the detail ends and it just like, you know, scrawl over everywhere.
Yeah, micron markers are really good for that.
Yeah, but like you could just, you know, wipe off any excess, and I think for what I managed to do, it looked pretty nice. And honestly, if I can find some pictures of it, I'll try to I'll send them over so you can put them in
for
here.
sure. I'd love to see it. Let's see. So we got the markers down. I guess one thing I'll say about the Tamiya panel line accent, it is something that's very nice to have. It's very efficient because of the way it flows. You know, you have to shake it up so it becomes very, very runny. If you don't shake it beforehand, I made that mistake when I first used it. It will not run very well and you're going to get a bad result. But it is very efficient. It's very good looking and very clean. It's very easy to clean up. You have to be extremely careful with it though, because I will say if you're going to use this, you need to be prepared to top coat your kits first. Give it a nice, good, sturdy layer of top coat before you do any panel lining. And then what you're going to need to do is make sure that that panel lining does not pool up, because what it will do is it will seep into that plastic, especially if it's not panel lined. It'll seep into the plastic and it will crack it. there will be cracks in the panel lines, and then that panel liner will seep into that crack, and there's literally nothing you can do about it.
Yeah.
Except for paint, and then do it all over again.
Yeah.
I had a couple cracks on my Justice Gundam, thankfully not in any conspicuous places, and that was just because I didn't know not to let it pool up at the time, but I found out that's why it was doing that afterwards. I made sure to lay down a thicker layer of top coat on my Master Grade Mark II, and I had absolutely no issues.
But there is an alternative. So if you want to panel line your kits in, let's say, exotic colors, right, that aren't available in a marker or something, you can make your own washes. And you can make them with whatever fluid of your choice that is plastic safe. So like alcohol, for example, is very, very plastic safe, generally speaking.
Right.
And there's something that I've liked to do. So for like white panel lining, what I'll do is, I have the white Gundam marker, but I just won't shake it up that much so that it's kind of, whatever comes out is like still fairly thin. Yeah. So you make a couple of passes over a black part with that, and then it'll pool in different places and it'll look horrible. But you take your cotton swab after it all dries and just go over it, and with like a little bit of alcohol to take off all the pools, and you'll be left with a perfectly clean white panel line on a dark color.
There you go.
Yeah.
Yeah, and of course that is something you can do. I wanted to circle back to the Tamiya thing in the sense of talking about how to clean it up. I believe the actual official product recommends that you use, what is it? Is it like lacquer thinner or something like that? Yeah,
I think it's like the X20 thinner that you're supposed to use,
it's like,
right?
So they'll tell you to use lacquer thinner. Lacquer thinner fucking eats plastic. Lacquer thinner will fuck. I had some overspray on my Mark II when I was color correcting the yellow on the shields, because they give you stickers for the master grade. They don't give you any yellow parts. And I was like, I don't want to use color correcting stickers on a master grade. So I taped it off. I had forgotten to mask like one area, so I got a teeny bit of overspray, and I was like, it's lacquer paint. I'm just gonna use some lacquer thinner to fucking wipe it off. I forgot that lacquer thinner eats paint, so I had like just some mushy paint area. Thankfully I fixed it it was very minimal damage. It was noticeable but minimal. I was able to sand it down to look good again. But yeah, if you're using lacquer thinner very liberally when you're trying to wipe off the panel line, you're gonna destroy your kit. So here's what I recommend instead, and here's what a lot of other people recommend. To clean off Tamiya panel line accent, get lighter fluid. Get a thing of, if you can't find Zippo brand, I believe any type of lighter fluid will work, but Zippo brand lighter fluid is what I use. I pour a little bit of it in like one of those little plastic Dixie cups or whatever, and get it on a cotton swab, and wipe it off so it's not completely soaked, but you still have it on there, because you don't want it running all over your kit, getting in the panel lines and erasing what you've already done. But you let your panel liner dry for about 10 to 15 minutes, and then you wipe it off with Zippo lighter fluid. Completely harmless to the plastic, but it absolutely just eats that excess panel liner, and it'll leave you with a really good looking result.
Yeah, totally. And what exactly is lighter fluid? Like, is it
I don't
is it
know.
like
I've never looked at it.
I think
I can pull over. I don't know if it's gonna tell me from the container, but let me slide over here real quick. It says it's got light petroleum distillate in it.
Ah, okay, so it is actually, okay, well, yeah, so it's like an oil, basically.
Yeah.
Essentially, yeah. Okay. Yeah, I've also heard that mineral spirits work really, fairly well.
I've heard that too.
Yeah, so that's basically a kind of alcohol. Yeah, like all of these different kinds of solvents, basically don't, like, not acetone, but like lighter fluid, mineral spirits, denatured alcohol, which does, like, all of these things are kind of handy to have on hand. Not just to, like, clean up your kits, but also if you make any spills, like, it'll keep them from, like, ruining your mat, your desk, or whatever.
Yeah. And okay, I think that's about all I wanted to talk about in terms of panel lining, but talking about markers made me think about Gundam markers, and I wanted to talk about that for a little bit.
Oh, sure, yeah.
Yeah. So Gundam markers are a great tool for having for, like, small details. Like if you want to touch up any metallic details like pistons that don't have color, some kits will come with chromed pistons, some won't. And if you want to add like any specific color to them, or if you want to add color to like piping or anything, Gundam markers are really good for that, really good for small details. But please, for the love of God, do not do what I've seen a lot of people do and try to use Gundam markers as a substitute for hand or air painting. Like, don't paint your whole kit using Gundam markers. It looks terrible.
Well, again, it's one of those things where if you know what you're doing and you experimented a lot, you can achieve miraculous results. But like the amount of effort and time it would take to get there
it's not worth it. You're better off investing the time it takes to learn how to do anything reasonable with Gundam markers in terms of overall painting. Just learn how to use an airbrush.
It's really funny because I remember I think it was sometime last year, like a while ago, they were launching the Gundam, the EX Metallics or something, right?
Yeah.
And they had the display at Gundam Base showing the little SD cross silhouette Zaku 1 that you can build out of a regular Zaku and one of the silhouette booster kits.
Yeah.
And they're like, look, you can do this with the EX Metallic blue and green. And I'm just like, no, you can't. Like, are you serious? That's sure, yeah, like that's a great it's a demonstration of what the color looks like, which is fantastic, but like honestly, doing that with just a marker on its own is pretty much impossible.
Yeah, I would say don't bother with the Gundam marker air spray set either.
Yeah, it's again, it's one of those things where okay, if your marker is perfectly well mixed, right? Your nib isn't clogged at all. And the thing is that you have to buy the specific kind of like filter type nib separately for those airbrush systems, because the regular plastic nib doesn't flow out smoothly enough for the compressed air to not splatter.
Right.
And I think like cleaning the nib is basically impossible. Like even if you soak it like in solvent like forever, like it, because it's such a long piece, right?
Exactly, yeah.
So like basically it's like one and done, and like yeah, like nibs are kind of cheap. They're not like super expensive, but like having
it's just a pain in the ass.
Yeah,
like it's a pain in the ass. Just get an airbrush.
Yeah, totally. But I will say though, all these disadvantages aside, like Gundam markers are still my weapon of choice, generally. Like all the painting that you've ever seen me do on any of my kits, basically these days it's all Gundam marker or some kind of marker.
Like they do have their applications and they are great for their like intended purposes though, although technically according to Bandai using the air spray set is also an intended purpose, but I would just say more along the lines of detail painting,
Yeah, for sure.
But yeah, they're not bad by any stretch of the means, just they're not a painting substitute.
Yeah, I will say that like the only real benefit, in my opinion, of Gundam markers is that you can get colors that are color matched basically exactly to whatever you're building most of the time.
Right, because they make stuff specific for some kits.
Yeah, and like the fact that they which set is it called? It's one of like the Gundam marker advanced sets that had that Titan's blue.
Yes.
The navy blue.
Yep, I know what you're talking about.
I was so happy that they made that because I was so sick of having to mix paint to like match that color. And I was like, yes, everything is solved. But otherwise, like for metallics, like if you want to do really good copper, silver, golds and stuff, I would actually recommend not using the Gundam marker metallics very much because the sheen that comes out isn't very like solid and it's not super shiny. Like you can get leafing pens from your local arts supply store and they're oil based, so you have to be a little bit careful about that because if you let it pool on the plastic, it can damage it.
Yeah.
Depending on the formulation that you use. But if you just use it lightly and very controlled, you can get much better finishes with those pens than you can with the regular acrylic metallics in the Gundam marker sets.
For sure. There was this one like chrome like silver chrome marker that I saw floating around some people were using. It produces incredible looking chrome, like almost mirror finish results.
Yeah.
But the thing is, it needs to cure for like a week or something.
Yes. So I actually have one of those. Let me just grab it so I know what I'm looking at.
What is it called? Because I can't remember the name.
So the maker is Marvi Uchida.
Okay.
And the line that they sell it under is Deco Color.
Okay.
So I have and the pens also come in a variety of tips. So the big one is like a big chisel tip, and then you can go all the way down to like a fine point kind of pen nib, and I think that's like 0.7 mil if I'm not wrong.
Okay.
Which is still kind of large, but the thing is, like, you can kind of just play with the edge of the nib, and you can do really fine detail with it without making too much of a mess. And the nice thing about the chisel tip is that if you want to do like blades, like let's say, so a good example is like the high grade Exia, the sword. Let's say you want to paint the edge of like maybe the GN Sword 2, 3, and the big one. You want to do chrome. The chisel tip is really good for that. So you put it down, you just do one pull. And then you just don't touch it.
And it gets that whole edge. Yep.
Yeah, it gets the whole edge. It comes out really nice and smooth, and it's almost like just mirror finish. Well, I mean, it's not like mirror finish, but like it looks really
like
good.
a good chrome. It looks a lot better than the silver chrome Gundam marker. Yes.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. I actually, it's like the old Gundam chrome marker. So like I remember, so Bandai hasn't made that marker in years now, right? But like there are some places that still have them somehow. I don't know how they still have them, but they do. And it used to be talked up a lot. Like if you go back to maybe some Gundam videos from like 2009, 2008ish, I think Prime 92 talked about how it's like one of her favorite colors to use.
Right.
I could not for the life of me ever get it to mix anything and just come out anything that wasn't just the solvent. Like just it would just come out like clear.
Yeah.
Like I had no idea where the pigment is in the pen, but it just never worked for me.
Oh man.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. One other thing I wanted to throw in there, in terms of not even in terms of like the Gundam markers. This was just like a general tip for cleaning up your kits that I thought of earlier and I totally forgot to mention. If you're cleaning up your nubs and you notice a little bit of whiteness, not like a stress mark that's into the plastic, but just a little bit of whiteness. All you have to do to get rid of that, just rub your fingernail over it.
Yeah.
That's like a little life hack that you can use. And just scrape it with your fingernail, and it'll get rid of a lot of stuff.
And it turns out that heat can also help a lot with that in general. So like if you have a deeper stress mark, again you have to be very careful because the melting point, like polystyrene becomes soft at pretty low temperatures. But like if you have tea lights or something like that, just like warm it up like just the tiniest bit, and it can help get rid of stress marks as well.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
In terms of overall like kit improvements, I think that was most of what I wanted to cover. Do you have anything else that you wanted to add? Because I mean, we're well over the 1 hour mark, kind of approaching hour 15. So it's been a decent conversation, I would say. But did you have anything else in mind you wanted to cover?
Yeah. I would say like generally speaking, like yes, there are a lot of cheaper ways to do a lot of things that you may want to achieve with your builds, but don't try to cut too many corners.
Right.
Because I definitely did that a lot in the beginning, and honestly, like the headache kind of isn't worth it. Like for me, I don't like mixing colors, so that's why I use Gundam markers. Like I don't have like super good lighting that I can count on all the time, right? So I'll mix some color and it'll look right, and then I'll like take it out into the sun and it'll look like garbage. So that's something I don't mess with. So, and also the other thing I guess is just more importantly is just like even when it's about cutting corners, like know what you can do, right? And experiment to find out what you can do, and just choose what makes you comfortable, because at the end of the day you're making something for yourself to make yourself happy. So like
unless you do commissions.
But even if you do,
lucky
right?
bastards who get to live off of making Gunpla for other people.
Even if you do, like know what you can promise. So
exactly. It's a saying in the art world, you have to know the rules before you can break them.
Yes, certainly. And I think that definitely applies to Gunpla in like every single way.
Right. because it's a difference between a professional simplifying his methods down because he knows what he can get away with versus somebody who's an amateur trying to cut too many corners and it ends up looking like shit, you know?
Yeah. Also, actually, speaking of nail polish, be very, very careful with nail polish because a lot of them are lacquer, and as we had just discussed, lacquer does eat plastic. So if you're putting lacquer straight onto a kit because you see a particular nail polish that has a color you really like, but you haven't put any primer underneath, just be warned that it can ruin the parts that the lacquer goes onto.
Yeah, for sure.
That's really important to know.
Sure.
Because I've seen people, I mean, obviously not recently, but like in the past, I have seen people literally paint whole kits with nail polish. And, well, first of all, that does get expensive, right? Because nail polish is not cheap, even if even if you buy the cheap stuff that's only like a couple bucks a jar, but like the jars are tiny. So like it'll streak, it'll do all kinds of horrible things. They're usually very thick in the jar because they're designed to go on your nails like in like maybe 2-3 coats tops. So like honestly, again, it's one of those situations where you think you may be cutting a corner by like buying this color that you already like, but if you just buy a proper paint and then thin it that way, you're going to probably get a better result in the long run.
Yeah. One last thing, do you want to preach to the people a little bit about glass files? Because I know you did a video on the gun primer versus like the dollar store stuff comparison. That video actually saved me a lot of money because I was about to go out and get some gun primer stuff, and I looked up a review, and your video came up first, and I was like, huh. Good to
yeah,
know.
Sure. I could talk about that a little bit.
If you want to red pill them a little bit on the gun primer.
There's so the gun primer. So first of all, to say that the gun primer product is literally like a dollar store glass file is not true. Like I mean, like it's very, very similar, right? But the argument I was making is that the difference in like quality and longevity between like a glass nail file you can find online for like a couple dollars versus their tens of dollar product is not.
They sell like their glass files for like $30 or something like that, don't they?
Yeah, like it's not worth it. Like because at the end of the day, it's a file, right? All it is an abrasive surface on a hard object. So
the difference between them is marginal, and it's not worth the huge price jump.
Yeah, and I only, I guess I could really say, and I didn't really mention this video, but the only reason why I decided to do that in that video is to show that you could get a like product that performs similarly.
Yeah, that ties into what we were saying is like you can get some stuff at your local stores or cheap on the internet. You don't have to jump right into getting the enthusiast grade products.
Yeah, and honestly, like if you just find some like high grit sandpaper and glue it to the back of a popsicle stick, like that will literally do the same thing as well. Right.
Yeah.
So just there's a lot of hobby snake oil out there, and that's hard. I guess that's the really hard thing to do, is being able to tell the difference between what's really a good quality product and what's really just somebody pulling your leg.
And sometimes, you won't even know that you got burned on a hobby snake oil product until you have that knowledge of like what's good and what's not. And like you might pay $50 for something that's completely bogus, but I mean it works, and you think, oh, this is the best thing ever, and then you realize a couple years later down the line or so, like, oh, I could have gotten this at the dollar store.
Yeah. So my best advice when it comes to this kind of stuff is, just make use of the community, right? Anytime you see something interesting that you think might be cool, and you're not quite sure about whether or not it's a good buy, just post a question on Reddit, in one of your Discords, ask one of us YouTubers anything, just do anything. And, chances are you'll get some feedback no matter what it is. Because
research is valuable, and it will save you money.
Yeah, there are so many people out here that have been doing this for so long, and we're all here to help each other, so.
Right, like there's probably a couple assholes floating around out there who are trying to, sit like a dragon on top of their hoard of fucking modeling secrets. Like, I'm not going to share my techniques with anyone. I need to have my own stuff, and I'm not going to teach you anything. But 99% of the people in the hobby, excuse the voice crack, gee whiz, my throat is dry. 99% of the people in the hobby we're all here to be a community, and we're here to help each other. You know, a lot of us are more than happy to spread our, you know, insight and wisdom, I guess, to newer builders, and that's kind of what we're doing right now. You know, is we're trying to help out people who are possibly less knowledgeable.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, it doesn't matter how long you've been in the hobby, right? It could be 10 days, it could be 10 years. You could have built 2 kits, you could have built 200. Like, I think there's some kind of insight that anybody of any experience level can always glean from someone else.
Exactly, because
So,
everyone has a different way of doing something. Everyone has things that work for them, and you're not going to know everything. Like you said, no matter how long you've been in the hobby, there's always something you can learn from somebody else. So even if you're not specifically looking to like do anything, like be proactive about you know, actually going out and customizing your kits, just be asking a lot of questions and accrue that information so you have a better foundation of knowledge for when you actually start building your kits, so that you're not having to actually like go around and start asking all of the questions at once. Go around and, like, right now, go ask your friends who are into the hobby what they do and start picking up tips from them to, you know, build a library of knowledge so you're not getting burned when you're first starting to try things out. There's so many things that I know to do now that I'm starting to get into that I totally would have gotten burned on, like using Zippo fluid versus not using the lacquer thinners. Like, I would never have known that if I hadn't asked around beforehand, but when I was asking around, I wasn't even doing any panel lining.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, totally.
You can't hurt yourself by being more knowledgeable.
Yes.
Exactly. But I think that is a good place to wrap up the discussion. I don't really have too much more I wanted to add. You know, of course, we can get into some more tips and whatever discussion regarding that in the future, but I think that's going to be a wrap for this episode. Next episode, not really sure what we have planned. I don't have a topic in mind, but I'm sure one of us will think of something between this recording session and the next one. But I hope you guys enjoyed. Thank you for coming on again, Citrus. It was a pleasure. Oh, I just knocked over my little box I had up here, but it was a pleasure talking to you as always.
Yeah, happy to be here.
Yeah, for sure. I hope you guys listening at home enjoyed, and I hope that the less knowledgeable of you out there possibly learned something and maybe got a little bit of confidence boost to actually go out and start customizing your kits. And that was, you know, the main goal is to just help educate and inspire builders to not be so afraid to start customizing, because that is the biggest hurdle, is to get over your own fear of, you know, not wanting to screw something up, not wanting to take the jump, not take the dump, not wanting to take the jump, not wanting to take the jump into learning, because it's a gigantic learning curve, and the only way to get yourself ahead of that curve is to do it.
Yeah.
You know. But that's going to be all, guys. If you enjoyed the video, subscribe to the channel. Subscribe to Citrus's channel as well if you haven't already. I mean, I don't know how many of you haven't, because he has more subscribers than me, but maybe there's a little bit of a non-overlapping audience there, and you guys can find some content you like on his channel. But that's going to be it. So we will see you guys in the next episode of the Plamo Crew Podcast. Thank you for listening as usual, and peace out.